Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm going to be doing my first monthly wrap up. This past month was a good reading month because I was able to get a last minute week off, which was nice, and I was able to do quite a lot of reading during that week, more than I thought I would, to be honest, which is always a nice surprise. Back when I didn't have this crazy job that I currently have, I used to read on average 10 to 12 books a month. Now I'm lucky if I get to read 4. So I average generally a book a week, depending obviously on the size of the book. But this month I was able to read 7 books, which is really great. And I was really happy that I was able to get that many in. That is the most that I've read this year within a month. And I'm very happy, as you can tell. So let's jump right in and go through the books that I read. I do have this cue card to keep me on track. So the first book that I read this month was City of Brass. City of Brass is the first book in the Deadlands trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. I gave this book a 3.5/4 stars. Upon reflection, I do think it's more of a 3.5 stars. There is a trope in it that I realized reading this book that I do not like, and that is the traveling trope. The only books that I like the traveling trope in are the First Law trilogy because the group dynamic is perfection. And then I also quite liked it in The Faithful and the Fallen. I also didn't mind it in Eye of the World, the first book in the Wheel of Time series. So it really, for me, it depends on the characters. The characters have to be really solid for me to enjoy that trope. And I think the characters were the weakest in City of Brass. So it wasn't exceptional, but it was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the world building. I did like the introduction of other characters. City of Brass was 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. Strong start in the trilogy, and I definitely recommend you read this trilogy because you'll see my ratings in a second. Just power through the first book and you'll be good to go. The second book that I read was Kingdom of Copper, which is the second book in the David Bach trilogy. I gave this 5 stars. So we get the perspective of a specific character who I absolutely adore. He's one of my favorite fantasy characters. I loved his arc. This was for me a very easy 5 stars. And I really enjoyed the world building, and I think the plot developments and the political machinations were amazing. I just really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I couldn't put it down. I read it pretty quickly. It was fantastic. I then started Empire of Gold, and I got to about 70% of the way through and I stopped reading it. For me, it was dragging on a little bit. I ended up reading Heroes as a kind of in between, and I'll come back to Empire of Gold in a second because I want to go through the order in which I finished books. So I read Heroes, and obviously I gave that 5 stars. Absolute perfection. Joe Abercrombie, really his writing gets better with every single book. I don't even know how that's possible because his books are, honestly, they're like flawless. They are absolutely flawless, and yet he seems to be getting better, and it's just like, I don't know what you're getting better at, but you're getting better, and it doesn't make sense to me how you can get better when you're already the best. I gave it a 5 stars. I will have a dedicated review coming out to this very soon, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but just go and read it. Just pick it up soon. It's amazing. It's my second favorite one so far of all of the books that I've read of his. And I was surprised given the premise behind the book. But again, I have a review of that coming out soon, so I will leave that one there. The fourth book that I then finished was Empire of Gold, which I ended up giving 4 stars. The pacing was really off in this one for me. It was the one downside. There was also one POV that I wasn't a massive fan of. I felt like it just kind of dragged a little bit and it wasn't necessary to have as much time with them as we did. But I really liked the ending. I thought the ending was really solid. I like the fact that the world is still open and that there are many ways that the story could continue on, which is great. I love that she didn't close that off. So there is a possibility that we can revisit the David Bad world in the future. I know she's working on some short stories right now and they are coming out next year, I believe. And then I know she's working on a different series, but I hope at some point in the future she will come back to this world because there's a lot in there that there is still to be played with, and I love that. So that was a solid 4 stars. And I think the overall trilogy was fantastic, and I will probably do a series review of it at some point, but I'll keep you guys posted on that. The next few books that I read, so I read 3 more books. They're all part of the same series, and that is the Savage Land series by Stacey Marie Brown. I was really craving some fantasy romance because I've read quite a lot of like intense fantasy recently. I just wanted something a little bit more lighthearted, something a little bit less, intense and something that I could just kind of pick up and just read quite easily and not have to think too hard about it. This series definitely fit the bill. 3 books are currently out. I don't know how many books she's planning to have in the series, but she is writing the 4th one, and I believe that's coming out next year. I'm not entirely sure, but from what I understand, that is what is happening. The first book was, for me, the worst one out of the 3 that I read. I gave it a 3.5 stars, which I think is pretty solid. It's very fast paced. I like the pacing in this book. There are a couple of downsides. One of the main downsides is that it starts off really cheesy. The main protagonist is very annoying. She embodies all of the tropes that I hate with female protagonists, young female protagonists. And she literally had all of them. Like, she ticked all of the boxes from the first minute, and it was very frustrating and I really didn't enjoy it. And then as her character started to mature towards the kind of middle of the book, I started to not hate her as much, which was good. By the time that we got to the 3rd book, I actually didn't mind her. I'm not going to say necessarily that I liked her, but I didn't hate her. So progress. So the 2nd book is called Wildlands, and I gave that a 3.75. And then the 3rd book is called Deadlands, which I also gave a 3.75. The pacing definitely remains throughout the next 2 books. I think the plot also develops in quite a, again, it's not particularly original, but the plot is decent. I really enjoyed some of the character dynamics that we get in the 2nd and the 3rd book that we didn't necessarily see in the 1st book, and I really like to see how those interactions developed, which was nice. One of the other things that I really didn't like about this book is that it is self-published, and she either didn't have an editor or her editor was just not very good. And when books are poorly edited, it really throws me out of the narrative. Sometimes people don't necessarily notice these things because of the way that they read, but I noticed these things very quickly. And it threw me out of the narrative a number of times. That was very jarring. And that is the case in all 3 books. It was probably the worst in book 1, and then maybe book 3, and then probably book 2. Because I remember book 1 and book 3 in particular as being like taken out of the narrative because of that specific reason. I hope she gets an editor or a better editor for her next couple of books, because it's very frustrating to have to read a book that, you know, you can clearly tell like that word isn't supposed to be there, or it's supposed to be a different word, or the grammar is in the wrong place, or there's missing grammar. Like, it's just weird. It throws you off. I enjoyed the series. It was very addictive. I read a book a day essentially, and they are very easy to read. So, you know, it's not like, you know, the hardest fantasy that you'll ever read in your life, which is what I needed at the time, to be honest. I needed something just easy to digest and to take me out of the fact that I've been reading a lot of quite dark fantasy recently. So that was good. So I started another book towards the end of August as well, which I'm still reading, and that is Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. So far, I'm loving it. I'm about 150 pages in. I'm taking this one a little bit slower. I have started back at work again, so my reading time is definitely not as much as it was last week. I'm trying to read, you know, maybe a couple of chapters a night. With Joe Abercrombie, I really like to pay attention to what he's writing. It's not, his books take a little bit longer to read because I want to devour every single word and not miss anything. So Red Country, you know, it's probably going to take me a couple of days to finish, and I'm excited because then I will have finished the last standalone, and then I've got the short stories next, which I will probably read next month. There you have it. There is my August wrap up. I read some good books. I read a nice mixture of different books as well. I would recommend pretty much all of them. Anything above a 3.5 for me is generally, it means that I liked it. And if it's a series and I rate the first book a 3.5, I will generally carry on with the series. So I think I actually had a really solid reading month. I was pretty happy with all the books that I read, and the fact that they were all kind of different subgenres. Let me know what you read. Let me know if you've read any of these or you're planning to. I'd be super curious to hear your thoughts. But otherwise, I'm going to leave this video here, and I will see you in the next one, folks. Take care, everybody. Have a lovely day, and I'll speak to you soon.